that's a real value of the HCI&D community, is that there are folks, both directly and affiliated, um, that are really kind of spanning a lot of different modes of inquiry and ideas and important issues. So hey, I'm Aidan Fitzsimons. I'm a second year PhD student in the Technology and Social Behavior program. So TSB is a collaboration between the computer science department and the School of Communications, and specifically the Media Technology and Society group. And so I'm basically split half and half between those groups. But functionally, my central and uniting community at Northwestern is kind of the HCI&D center and the faculty that are associated with it. I'm advised by two different faculty who are closely related with the center. One of them is one of the co-directors. So I'm co-advised by Liz Gerber and Dury Long. Liz Gerber is one of the co-directors, and then in addition to being part of the TSP program, I also am a member of the cognitive science community. So I did an additional specialization in cognitive science in a coursework setting. And I was also a cognitive science fellow. And this year I'm also a design fellow with the HCI&D Center. Um, and really what I do and the work that I focus on kind of spans across many of Northwestern schools. So I work on developing intelligent coaching systems to support students of all resource backgrounds when they're writing about themselves for important kind of high stakes settings like the college application admissions process, and then imbuing those kind of tools and designs both with influence from a field called narrative psychology, which another professor at Northwestern, Dr. Dan McAdams, kind of created or identified in the space and has become a very large kind of subfield of developmental psychology. Um, and then so I'm doing it with a little bit of that ethos, and then also really working from a community-centered perspective, and trying to engage in participatory design methods with community partners. So we work with a couple of nonprofit organizations as well as university admissions offices. And so we're really trying to respond to student and community organization needs rather than, coming from we're trying to make money off of kids who are stressed about the college process. Like that's the furthest thing from our goal, and we're kind of responding to that being the status quo in the space with the work that we do. Um, so yeah, the stuff that I do kind of it pulls in a bunch of different departments at Northwestern, and it's been really, really exciting and fun. And I think that that's a real value of the HCI&D community, is that there are folks, both directly and affiliated, um, that are really kind of spanning a lot of different modes of inquiry and ideas and important issues. And so that's been really, really exciting, and an amazing opportunity for me to kind of expand kind of the interdisciplinary questions that I'm asking in my own work. Absolutely. So this is actually a great opportunity to talk about how, in kind of opposition or in contrast to the very fast classical kind of Silicon Valley move fast and break things ethos, the human-centered design process can be a lot more measured and take a lot more time. And so in my first year and a half, I say like we're working towards building these kind of intelligent coaching systems. Um, and I actually haven't done all that much building yet or implementing of kind of these preferred future systems, things that we think are possible. So I'll talk a little bit about what we've done and also where we're going with the development. And so what we've done so far in the past year and a half is really trying to understand the existing landscape that students are facing, and whether or not they are indeed using these tools, how they're using these tools, why they're using these tools, and what kind of where they kind of fall short. And so that has looked like a couple things so far. One of them is that we went and interviewed 20 students who had just recently done the college admissions process, both students who are now at Northwestern and plenty of students who are at universities all across the country. Um, we went and interviewed them about whether or not they and their peers in high school used tools, general purpose large language model tools like ChatGPT or Claude to help them kind of script these essays about themselves. Um, and we really got into questions about when along the process. So, like, did you use it to help you with planning? Did you use it to help you with scripting? Did you use it to help you with revision? As well as kind of motivations for why a lot of students talked about feeling like they would be at a competitive disadvantage if they didn't use these tools because so many of their peers probably were, but they had kind of like an unclear set of information about how much everyone else was doing it. But that kind of pressure pushed them towards using it. Um, so we went and tried to understand for students like what's the kind of status quo landscape that they're facing in today's day and age with access to general purpose large language models, and what kind of problems are driving their use. Because we really want to kind of meet students where they're at and say, well, these are real problems for why students are using this. You're a college student, and it's not. I don't need to tell you how crazy the process has gotten in the past, even since. So I applied. I started college in 2017, and since then, it's become astronomically more insane. And students are writing 3 to 4 times as many essays as I was when I was applying, and so trying to keep up with that kind of insane workload on a functional level for many students, given that they were, working jobs to support their family, doing all these things, very involved in their school communities, whatever, kind of necessitated some type of support to streamline the process. And so we're trying to kind of understand those needs for students and not kind of demonize or punish people for why they're using these tools, and instead say, okay, like, can we meet them where they're at, help them resolve those same needs while still preserving kind of a valuable cognitive process that helps people build kind of like a self-concept or a capability to talk about themselves in a narrative sense that then when they go to say do an interview for a job and are asked kind of behavioral questions about tell me about a time when you disagreed with a sense of authority and how you handled that issue. They're not like, I have never thought about these issues before. So in many ways, like the college process is kind of a very unpleasant but good grounds for training of how to talk about yourself in a narrative sense. And it really becomes kind of an important bedrock of adolescents' kind of narrative psychology as they go into college and emerging adulthood. Um, so kind of motivated by, we know students are using this in all different kinds of ways. A lot of students that we talked to felt like some of their peers were using it to almost like plug and chug and get full essays. We then said, okay, on a technical level or on a like a content level, what kind of narrative biases might show up in these produced essays from general purpose large language models? Um, and so what we did was we did basically what like a mixed methods content audit of we had ChatGPT produce 160 essays, and then we had a group of students actually review these essays for a number of narrative tropes and like narrative quality measures, um, and found that these models really do reify like master narratives or dominant cultural narratives about students of different identities. So in this study, we were looking at students of different gendered identities. So prompting the model with I am a student versus I am a male student versus I am a female student versus I am a trans male student, etc. Um, and we see a very, very stark increase from no mention of gender or dominant gender, saying that you're a cisgender male. Um, Pretty minimal representation of a struggle narrative compared to when you mentioned that you're a trans student or really any student of non-dominant gender queer students, etc. We see that it shows up in almost all of the narratives that these models produce, and we're quite concerned from the perspective of we know that kids watching TV and um, being exposed to advertisements and getting these kind of narrative ideas of how people like them should exist in society has real meaning on their developing self-concept. We're really interested in what these kind of hyper personalized developed essays might do for these students their sense of self-concept, especially if for students of minority gender identities, it's really reifying some harmful master narratives about how they should think about themselves in context of society. And so that's where we are right now. So it's been about a year and a half of trying to figure out what's out there, what are the problems that are of concern. Um, and now we're really kind of we're starting to engage with, so how do we work with our community partners to build something better? Um, and so the first stage of that is that so we've been we have a bunch of tools that we could kind of like prototype. So in those interviews with students, I had them write some short essays with AI just to have them like get in the mindset and whatnot. But we're now starting to kind of build and prototype early versions of tools to support coaches or parents with helping their students with writing these essays, kind of imbued with these kind of narrative psychology ideas. One of the things that we're really interested in our work is not necessarily replacing human capacity, especially for such a personalized task like this, but instead kind of using technology to capitalize on like uh human capital and like the capital of human relationships between people. And so saying, maybe not everyone has a person in their life that is highly knowledgeable about the selective college admissions process, but everyone in their life has someone in their life that's very knowledgeable about them and about what really speak like that really speaks to you, and that's how I see you. And I'm hearing that it could be a parent, it could be a trusted teacher, it could be a coach, many kind of varieties of that. And many of those folks want to help these students but don't know the kind of like nuances and parameters of like the kind of hyper funky selective college admissions process. And so what we're really interested in doing is both empowering people who don't have kind of a knowledge of the selective college admissions process to support their students in developing these essays where they know they may not be an expert on the selective admissions process, but they are an expert on the person who's writing the essays in some ways, um, a relational expert, if not. And then also trying to kind of maximize. So in every public school in America, you're required to have some type of counselor that can help you with college access. The problem that we were seeing when we talked to many of these students is that, these people each serve 400 people. And so they have very minimal opportunities to get really personalized and work really closely with these people. And so with each student. And so the question is, how can we use like kind of coaching tools to kind of almost do like triage to provide overburdened counselors with upfront information about how to best serve each student based on kind of their emerging process. And that might look like, kind of an integrated system where students are working to develop their essays, and then there are certain things that are measured and reflected to the coaches in their personalized meetings and whatnot. Um, but really, these are just kind of we have a number of kind of ideas bubbling around of like how we might accomplish the needs that we've surfaced over the past year and a half. But the next step is really like we don't want to go too far in doing that work without the stakeholders that we're actually interested in serving. And so what we're doing now is we're putting together with our community partners and like our admissions offices partners, we're putting together a a plan for a year to develop our participatory design workshop. So we're going to work with our stakeholder partners and meet with them each month to kind of refine our plan for exactly what we're going to do over a multi-year kind of participatory, really involved participatory design engagement that will result in hopefully tools that will support students, parents, coaches in a more equitable process that can be offered for people for free. Um, and that would kind of meet and serve the needs of these organizations that we're working with, and organizations like them. Um, and so we don't want to go into the participatory design process with too many kind of preconceived notions of like what is right. That's kind of in opposition to the central values of what we're trying to do or trying to accomplish within the participatory design process, working with these partners. And so we're almost like a little bit over our skis, and that we have almost like a little bit too many ideas that we're like, okay, hold on, let's just get to the workshops. So that's where we're at right now in terms of, so we haven't actually designed any tools. We're working on like the carefully like organized design process. One of the things that'll be kind of complicated with that is that imagine you're a high school student applying to college and you're sitting across from an admissions officer at Northwestern. Um, there are probably some power dynamics where you're worried about what you feel comfortable saying. And so we're also kind of exploring what different ways of sharing out these different student and adult perspectives might be across these kind of power differentials, which is also kind of a feature of the participatory design process on a methodological level. Um, we have not yet built things, but we're starting to build things with the through the guidance of our community partners, really. And we've spent a long time kind of understanding the base landscape that we're kind of trying to improve from, if that makes sense. I am not interested in building things for the sake of building
Yeah.
things, and move fast and break things is, I think we've seen a lot of the literal harm that causes to many people and community groups in society, and not just like metas move fast and break things, but like that whole ethos, the Silicon
Yeah.
Valley ethos of like building for the sake of building, and if it can be done, it should be done for the sake of exploratory science. And then it's like, well, this is a terrifying tool in the hands of people, et cetera, et cetera. So much, I am much more, and the HCI+D Center's kind of central values are much more kind of a measured, thoughtful, and community centered design process for sure. Absolutely, that's a great question. So I'll speak first on what it's like to work on with Dr. Gerber, specifically. Um, with Dr. Gerber, and her kind of like central value of not just doing things for the sake of understanding and within academia, but also how do we really make the things that we're working on tangibly valuable for people. Um, that was kind of so I wasn't necessarily as familiar with the HCI&D Center in particular, but I was familiar with Dr. Gerber's work when I applied to work with her. Um, and that kind of the thing that kind of like centrally caught my eye was that she had a lot of experience and background running and working with nonprofit organizations. So she's very involved, and she's the faculty co-founder of Design for America, and also very involved in the nonprofit sector kind of writ large. Um, and that was something that I knew I wanted to do in the context of my work. So I knew that I wanted to work with community partners really closely, and really centrally focus my work on supporting community partners like the ones I do now. Um, and uh, I felt like Dr. Gerber's like career had kind of centrally been focused on that, on trying to take whatever we were doing in a lab setting, you know in an office building in Northwestern, and saying, okay, like this has no value unless it's valuable for people outside of this space. Um, and really taking that and putting that into practice by actually like working in a community embedded setting, and like working in a nonprofit where the other folks involved in it are not academics, was a big thing that was kind of what very much drew me to working with Liz. Um, and then when I got to Northwestern and started kind of getting exposure to the center more broadly, I think that what has changed about my work from my exposure to the center and being a fellow this year and all these things is that I describe it as like we have a really deep bench, which is like there are so many faculty who have a lot of really interesting perspectives that are slightly different, wildly different, or super related to your work. There aren't that many groups of folks out there, or like there aren't that many faculty groups that have this many people focused on human-centered design, human computer interaction, kind of across. There's really folks across learning sciences, journalism, communication, computer science, mechanical engineering. We have a really human-centered research group across these spaces. And so I think that getting perspectives from other faculty who like don't think about the kind of like, psychology stuff that I'm super interested in or whatnot has been really valuable in pushing my work forward for, okay, let's make sure that this is valuable for everyone. Like I can get into my own head a little bit about like specifically working with like the needs of our particular community partners, but it's also nice to talk to people who are like, okay, well, I have a kid, and really having an intellectual community that can engage with your work really closely, but also just like a wide set of lived experiences on a faculty level from HCID, I think is a really valuable thing that has kind of pushed my work forward. When I came here, I didn't know that I was like going to work on like personal narrative stuff for college admissions or anything. And I think that that has partially come from like really just talking to a lot of faculty and seeing what about these different things like resonates with them or is interesting to them, both on an intellectual level and a personal level. And so I think that that has been a really huge value.